great to see you. I am looking forward to this morning as a time to be encouraged. I'm going to make the assumption that you're all as exhausted and confused as I am. So we're going to have a great time together. The way this will work is there's a chat function. You've all done this so many times now, it's painful, I'm even going to remind you. Anything you want to say, any questions you want to ask, any moments of inspiration, or just say, please stop now, Ed, it's all very tedious. You can just write that in chat. The magical Anita is in charge of chat, and she'll sometimes prod me electronically to tell me to take notes of something. We have a few different people speaking this morning. Thank the Lord it's not just me. So we'll have a few short slots. We're halfway through, we're going to have a breakout group in groups of 6, and at the end we're going to have another one of those, because we've found that even though we're strangers, we have so much in common, we still want to talk to each other. So we're enjoying also learning how to do this. Before we just hear from some others, I'm just going to show us a few verses in Philippians 1. So if you just want to turn up to Philippians 1, I'm tempted to tell you in my Bible it's on page 1284, only because I find it faintly amusing. Amy's shaking her head, she doesn't find it amusing. Okay, I'm in Philippians 1. We're going to look at verses 3 to 11. Amy, are you in a position to read this out for us? Amy's one of my colleagues, so she expects to be surprised like that. Amy, Philippians 1, 3 to 11, go.
With the sound of a boiler in the background, but we can cope with that. I thank my God every time I remember you, in all my prayers for all of you. I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. It is right for me to feel this way about all of you, since I have you in my heart, and whether I am in chains or defending and confirming the gospel, all of you share in God's grace with me. God can testify how I long for all of you with the affection of Christ Jesus. And this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God.
Thanks, Amy. Anita is going to drop in 3 simple ideas into the chat that I'm just going to talk us through. In my Bible, there are 3 paragraphs. I'm just going to have one simple idea from each of these 3 paragraphs. I think we need passages like this in this peculiar season because Paul speaks so lovingly of those he's writing to. I think in lockdown, it's probably what I miss most is just the incidental stories of people's lives, just hearing what people are doing, the normal things, the strange things, the exciting things and the sad things. Paul here is speaking to those he loves, and he's telling them why he loves them and why he prays for them. So firstly, we, like Paul, give thanks for the partnership. We give thanks for partnership. In all my prayers, verse 4, for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel. From the first day until now. We are in partnership with the parents we're talking about today. We are in partnership, and that is worth rejoicing over. That is worth giving thanks for. We just need to clarify the language we think about the parents with. Do we find ourselves thinking, why don't you do more? Do we find ourselves thinking, I wish I could do more? Do we find ourselves thinking, oh, if only I could just get those children and put them there? And we are in wonderful partnership with the parents. That's why we're having today, because what I know about the people who are joining us is that you know this, you love these parents, and you're here because you want to partner with them to raise children to know Christ. There is a team going on here. That's the language Paul uses of all of those he is doing ministry with. And it's exactly the same language we can use for parents. So when we hear stories of partnership, of parents, it lifts our hearts. I got this email from Amy. We've been doing these mini family Bible times in Mark that you can find on YouTube and Facebook. And I've gained so many friends who I've never met, who have been doing them with their families. After looking at the end of Mark 13, when Jesus says, I'm going to come back, are you going to be ready like a servant waiting? Amy sent me this message saying, today my 6-year-old asked me about this passage. I explained to her I wasn't really sure when Jesus was coming back, but he is. She didn't like the idea of going to heaven, but when she learned how amazing heaven will be and that we'll all be together, she was so excited. Listen to this. She started to jump up and down and praise Jesus. She couldn't get over how awesome and mighty God is. She asked if she will get to see Jesus and be with him in the new heaven. And I said, yes. She said, how amazing. I'll kiss and hug him every day because I love him. There speaks a child in lockdown. Amy finished by saying, I've been a bit blindsided by everything going on. Her reaction humbled and overwhelmed me. It brought me pure joy to see her so happy and excited to hear God's going to come back. When we hear that story, you know, I've never met Amy. You don't know Amy. When you and I read this, we think this is partnership. Our hearts are lifted by that story because that's the sort of story we long to hear. We long for a parent to tell us of the encouragement of Christ in their family. So if you have felt that joy, even if it's been quite a long time ago, that's partnership. That means we do it together. That means we give thanks for it. Secondly, we share God's grace with affection. Verse 7, it's right for me to feel this way about all of you, since I have you in my heart, whether I'm in chains or defending and confirming the gospel, all of you sharing God's grace with me. God can testify how I long for all of you with the affection of Christ Jesus. We share God's grace. We share God's grace and we feel that deep, deep affection, the affection of Christ. That's a deep affection to feel for others. She may be here, I haven't checked. So I will use her name. Laura sent me an email about an encouragement she felt. And the encouragement she felt, I'm just going to show you a picture. Hang on. This will just take one moment. Okay, got that one. Right. I'm in here. Share. I always almost leave by accident. That one. Laura sent me this photograph. And what struck me was it's tempting. It's tempting for any of us to see this photograph as essentially a great number of those makeup removal pads and huge amounts of sellotape. And some of us are thinking that's really going to wreck the wallpaper one day. So you know, here is a photo of all sorts of strange things. And when you hear what it is, it changes everything. One dad has been an absolute legend and every week has sent me photos of his daughters completing the craft or reciting the memory verse. A couple of weeks ago, he sent me a photo of his eldest daughter, the work of what his eldest daughter has been doing over the weeks we've been producing these videos. She's made a wall with the crafts and the things she's learnt from the Wonder of Easter and the Ephesians series. I think you'll agree how amazing it is to see the word of God sink into her heart. If I take nothing else from this time, I will always remember this and how God has been working in the family during this time. That is affection. That is sharing God's grace. That is seeing a lot of sellotape and makeup removal and saying, this is the work of the Lord. This is him at work in this family. This is a dad who is totally on it with his daughters. I say this every time I train at the moment, that I've never cried so much as during lockdown. So it's strange that makeup removal pads and sellotape moves me to the point of tears. Maybe it does to you, or maybe you just think, Ed, you need to get out a lot more. And I do. We share God's grace with affection. So you may be feeling, as I am, totally spent. If you feel some of that affection, you might like just to think of one family in lockdown who have got by. The affection you feel for them, the thankfulness you feel. God's grace has been at work. They've not flown. They're not a story of revival. They've got by and they've shared God's grace. That affection you feel is happening. Lastly, we pray for the love of Christ until his return. Verse 9, this is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the praise and glory of God. Paul's prayer is for your love to abound in knowledge and depth of insight, more and more and fruit until Christ's return. Knowledge leads to insight, that leads to fruit, that leads to Christ's return. Have you started dreaming yet of the day you walk towards church and you walk with people as they come out of their lane and you come out of your car, and towards the door of church you find that you're one of many? Do you start to dream of singing in church like you're an African, rather than a strangely uptight European with your arms folded, or it's just me? I dream of singing like I'm an African. I dream of, I've never danced in church so far. I'd like to think I will when we meet together for the first time. That walk towards church, imagine you're walking towards your church building. You've got a family joined you for that last 100 yards. Imagine what you're going to feel about that family then. I promise you, you will not remember the last time she said that unhelpful thing. You'll not notice what his shoes are like. You'll not notice that there's a stain on his t-shirt. You'll not notice what car they got out of. You'll not notice anything except the absolute joy and pleasure to be with them, worshipping the Lord. You know, that is the picture here. We are walking towards Christ's return. And Paul is saying this is what we are going to pray in the meantime. You are not going to pray about clean t-shirts. You're not going to pray about new shoes. You're not going to pray about a bigger car. What are you going to pray for them? You're going to pray that they know Christ better. So I want to tell you now, this next hour and a quarter is going to be deeply, deeply disappointing. We are not going to tell you what is needed to support parents. We will not tell you the magic we have discovered that makes it all simple. We may leave you with one idea that is moderately mediocre and interesting. That's about all we can offer. The best thing we can offer you is to know that we are walking towards Christ's return. If you partner with parents, theirs is the primary role of raising children to know Christ. But if you partner with them with thankfulness, if you share Christ's affection for them, and if as you walk towards Christ's return, you long for them to know Christ better, that will be all the partnership, the support and the encouragement of parents you need. There is nothing else we'll tell you today anywhere near as much value as what Paul says the way our hearts and minds should work. As we walk towards Christ's return, have a heart that longs for parents to know more of Christ. And that is the best form of encouragement and support you'll ever do. There is no blog we'll ever produce. There is no video we'll ever make that will compare to your heart wanting them to know more of Christ and praying for that to happen. I'm going to pray. My suggestion then is you pray too. Why don't you give thanks for partnership? If you want to think of a family you partner with, you could, but just pray, give thanks. And will you pray that your heart, my heart, our hearts will want families more than anything else to abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight of Christ. Okay, I'm going to pray, you're going to pray. In 3 minutes, we'll go again. Ready? I thank my God every time I remember you. Father, our hearts are full of thanks when we remember these parents we're thinking about today. Not because they've got it all sorted, not because they've downloaded every resource, not because theirs is a story of perfect discipleship, but because you have them and you want good for them. And this work you've started, you will carry on until Christ's return. Father, please be gracious. And would you give our hearts that sense of hope that you have these families when we really don't, that you have good plans for them when we don't, that you will carry them to Christ's return when we know we can't. Be gracious to us, Father, and give our hearts the fullness of Christ by your Spirit, because that will be enough. Amen. While you come blinking into the light, we have a straw poll for you. The purpose of this straw poll is to really just to get our brains firing. It's quite early. We may only have had 1 cup of coffee. So we'll see if that happens now. So I'm going to explain a little what's happening while we work out if there's an outcome of that straw poll. I bet Anita knows everything. We are now, in a moment, we're going to have 4 slots. Look, I've got answers, quick. That's got to stay there. Here we go. Do your team have capacity to do more? 63% said no. So in that case, for 63%, we need to make sure we don't give you more to do, but we just encourage you to keep going or even to do less. During lockdown, as I consider the families in my church, 53% feel encouraged. 53% has seen parents step up. That's great news. 31% aren't quite sure what's going on, and that's okay. I'm here today because 38% need ideas of what to do. 5% have no idea and wish they could answer questions like that, and that's okay. 30% want to be around others asking similar questions. That's good, because we're going to put you in breakout groups to ask similar questions and even to answer each other's questions. 28% need encouragement. So we need encouragement, we need some ideas, and we need to talk to each other, okay? That's what we're going to do today. When you go into a breakout group, you have to ask each other questions and things like that. You need no encouragement to do that. I'm now handing over straight to Jane. Jane is in Southampton. She is briefly going to tell us who she is and something about herself. And then she's going to talk about how we can encourage parents in the coming months. So this isn't everything you need to know about encouraging parents. This is, as we move to summer and as you're resting and as your team have little capacity, what might we be doing? Jane, do you want to unmute yourself? Tell us about yourself and how we can encourage parents in the coming months.
Okay, is that me?
Yes.
Am I there? Cool. Okay, so yes, I'm Jane. I head up the children's work in a large city centre church in Southampton. I'm married and I've got 3 boys, 22, 20 and 17, and they've all been home during lockdown. So it's been great most of the time. So last week, somebody said to me, are we scratching where families are itching? And I thought, I thought, are we? I thought that's a good question. But actually, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, oh no, because actually they're itching in lots and lots of different places. It's like they've got nits And I was like, we can't scratch. I'm sorry, you're making you all feel really itchy now in your hair, aren't I? We can't scratch. We can't make it all better for our families. So it kind of made me think, and it also made me go, well, but what does God ask of me? What am I here for? I'm to love God and I'm to love others. And I thought, how can I show that love to our families? I can't make it all better. And God is not asking me to make it all better. He's already got that. He's already, he's their rescuer. So, but what can I do to gently nudge them towards Jesus? So we're not going to talk about scratching anymore, but maybe a little scratch here and there. So I do the whole kind of, with my families, I do the whole blanket emails and resources and ideas. But what things I think have made the biggest difference? I think the things that have made the biggest difference are the personal things. So it's that text, it's that phone call to a mum who locked herself in the bathroom and the kids were all causing chaos in the room next door. She sits on the toilet and we were chatting and I could pray for her. It's the card that you send them. These are no small things. It's the little email that just says, I was thinking about you. How are you getting on? What can I pray for you? I was in conversation with a mum the other week who was despairing, who said, I can't do it, Jane. I can't do online services. I can't do it. She's got 2 young children. She's got a husband who works on Sundays. And I said, my response to her was, just keep going. And it was a sort of like encouragement. It fell on absolute silence. And I thought, oh, flip, I've blown it. I have just blown it with this mum. I've pushed it too far. But it made me go, I must pray. I kept praying for her. A week later, I got a message back from her saying, I'm going to give it another go. I want to keep going. I want to join a house group. I want to get to know other families in the church. And I was like, Lord, thank you. It is him at work in these families. And that was an encouragement not to give up. Keep praying for them. And even when you think you've blown it, just kind of keep going. I think so. If it's about personal things, it's keep it achievable as well. It's like, oh, I am going to contact every family in my church this week. Well, maybe that is achievable for you, but I think for most of us, it probably isn't. So keep it achievable. Maybe it's, get in touch with 2 families this week, send them a message, send them a card. Who's it going to be? Are there some people in your church, some people maybe on your children's team or some other people that you could get involved to do that as well? And instead of just saying, who wants to this, I've done this, so I'm learning from my mistakes. Who would like to send a card to somebody? Be specific. Say, hey, Elijah, could you contact this family and just send them a card? Be very specific, make it achievable for them as well. And remember that when you feel, oh, I've forgotten to contact them, or, oh, you feel a failure, remember that God has got them. It's okay. Don't despair. Don't give up. It's that just keep going. So keep it personal as much as you can. Keep those contacts knocking on the door, dropping round to people's houses and phone calls and things. The other thing that I have found that has surprised me has been some of the social media stuff. So we have a Facebook church group, which I'm not a big fan of, but I've decided we will embrace this. And 10 of those do those brilliant offers. And recently they were doing an offer on everyone a child should know. And it really linked to our Sunday series. So I said, oh, if you buy 4 copies of this, you get a bargain price. So I thought, okay, well, I'll do this. I posted it in the Facebook chat, thinking that maybe a couple of people might say, oh, yes, please. I ended up having to buy 12 copies of this book, which then meant I had to deliver it to 12 houses. But it just, I don't know whether it's different from an email because they can see a face. They kind of feel they're communicating directly with you. But it really encouraged me. I got more response. So I went and knocked on doors and I could see people and chatting. So that was good. Sometimes the social media stuff has been a place where, I don't know about you, but I have seen families feel very able sometimes to say how difficult they're finding it. And that's right, that's fine. But I also want to encourage families to to talk about the positive things that are happening. So one mum I chatted to, I said to her, what have you kind of put into place in lockdown? What have you got new routines with your kids? What are you doing? And she said one of the things in lockdown that she has done is every night when the kids are in bed asleep, she has gone into their bedrooms and she is praying for the children. And she said she's intentionally praying for them. She's using a card, which I gave to parents about 2 or 3 years ago. So that encouraged me that this hadn't just gone in a bin. But she's using 5 things to pray for your kids. And she goes in and she's intentionally every night praying. I thought that's a good idea. So I posted it in our Facebook church group saying, this is what a mum's doing. You know, what else are you doing? And people really responded going, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. And really kind of responded to it and were encouraged and going, oh, can we have a copy of 5 Things to Pray? Yes. So, and there was a buzz about it. So it's kind of encouraging those positive stories as well and helping our other families hear about those positive stories. So using personal things, that contact, whether by phone or email or card, using kind of positive stories in some of the social media. And then lastly, the other thing for us is encouraging families to be involved in our services. Our online services, I'm seeing more families than I have ever seen kind of on the screen or would have been normally involved in a service. So getting them praying, reading, doing a video. We were doing Peter and Cornelius this week, so we had a lovely video of 2 kids being presented with some rather revolting food and going and that was part of the service. So that was another thing that we've been doing. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is helpful. So there are some encouraging Zoom pros who are sort of chatting in their comments and enthusiasm. So Jane, thank you very much. So to everyone else, you are all very welcome. And I should have said this earlier, but make yourselves known in the chat. Ask your questions, share your enthusiasm. Amy's telling us about delivering Diary of a Disciple activity books. Split the delivery across the team and added a personal card. Great response, some tears of gratitude. That's the story. Thank you very much, Jane. Jane was going to be hanging around for a bit longer. So or even to the end, possibly, who knows? But I don't want to commit her to that. If you have questions for Jane, if you just want to bounce off that and just share what you have done, a different take on what Jane was saying, or even to violently disagree with her, I guess that's even possible, but you won't do that because we're all lovely. But you could say something that's just different. I thought of it like this. Jane, thank you. Thank you very much. Jane, one last thing. Just you lead your children's work and you're a full-timer. Just briefly tell us, you presumably want to take a summer. So how are you trying to just juggle that simple, basic idea of Ed has asked you to speak about what you're going to do for the next few months, and you mainly want to go into a small room in the sunshine? How are you balancing that sort of, I'm meant to be in charge of something, but I'm totally spent?
We are having a summer, so I have got some holiday, and I think it is making sure that holiday really is holiday, that I don't have emails on my phone. I switch all of that off, and so that kind of putting those boundaries in, because I think one of the things has been that boundaries have just completely gone out of the window. So we're online all the time, and so making sure, I think, that in the summer, if I take my phone with me, it certainly hasn't got emails on it, and I am not touching those. I work with a couple of girls in our church so we always make sure that one of us is around in the church, so that if anybody has got questions and things, people can go to them, and that really helps. So it's kind of finding somebody else to carry some of that responsibility when you're not around. But that is, that's, I know not everybody has that, but actually families are okay. So they will survive when you're away for your week on holiday. That's all right.
It sounds, Jane, like you're not the Messiah for all of the families in your church.
What did you say?
You're not the Messiah, Jane.
No, not at all.
Isn't that good? I mean, I'm not the Messiah either, and that's good too. Thank you, Jane, very much. Next, we have Anna up, who is joining us from Parenting for Faith. Anna, would you unmute yourself and tell us a bit about Parenting for Faith, and then why we should be more like IKEA and less like a dentist?
Absolutely. What a question. Can everyone hear me okay? Sorry, it's annoying checking that, but you don't want to get a little way in and find that you're not. So my name's Anna. I live in Milton Keynes and I work for Parenting for Faith as their national coordinator and as a children's minister on the side. Used to do that a bit more full-time. Now it's a bit more part-time, but expandable. I know many of you will know what that is like. And at Parenting for Faith, we're all about trying to support parents and carers to raise God-connected children and teens. So helping them have a relationship with God that lasts a whole lifetime, which is exactly what you guys are trying to do. So that is fantastic. I will get to the dentist and IKEA in a minute, but firstly, I just wanted to ask everyone, how is the coffee and the cake? I don't know about you, but that's how I judge a conference, a big day out or a small morning in. Can you just hold up if you've got a drink with you? Can you just show me what you got? Maybe type in the comments. Tea, coffee, yeah, water, it's a warm day. Anyone with anything really fancy, like a chai latte or an elderflower cordial? No? Not see it. Type in if you've got something really cool. We like to think we don't judge the conference by it, but we do a little bit, don't we? And, oh, yeah, peppermint tea, very nice, very nice. Anyone got a snack? Anyone brought anything to eat? I'm going to be so impressed if anyone's got cake. I'm not seeing any cake. Don't worry, guy. Oh, Helen has got a toasted tea cake. Lovely. Judith, you have no food or drink. Someone post Judith some food and drink. We need that to happen. But on the basis that I thought you might not bring the cake, I have made some cake. Now, I don't know if you can see this. It actually doesn't look that appetizing, but trust me, it smells delicious and it tastes delicious. I've already eaten some of it. That's why it looks like that. I am a big fan of mug cake. I have quite a sweet tooth and I like that you can, with nothing else in the house, you can think, oh, I fancy something a little bit sweet. 2 minutes later and a couple of teaspoons and you can whip up something delicious. Now, there are 2 ways that I could tell you about my love for mug cake and why you should also love mug cake. So I'm going to give you 2 options, a bit like the optician. Probably don't remember opticians. I don't know if they're allowed again yet. I'm going to ask you if it's better with 1 or with 2, okay? So this is option 1. It is really important that you make sure you are happy, and cake is an important part of that. So I want you to listen carefully. I'm going to list some ingredients and I want you to write them down. If you've got a pen and paper, there are various different steps here and it's very important that you understand each one so that you get this right. I know that you know this is important, it matters to you, and we don't want to mess this up, do we? Okay, so that is option 1. Now for option 2. This isn't any cake. This oozy chocolate deliciousness, I'm not going to eat, it's too risky, smells and tastes amazing. You have the ingredients in your house and in just 2 minutes you could be eating it as well. Type in the comments if you know which advert I am referencing. They're a little bit old now, they don't do it in quite the same way, it's disappointing. Someone's going to come up with it, come on. Or do the sign for me, like YMCA. Yes, yes, we have some M&S advert people. Okay. Now, I don't know about you. You're probably all much more self-constrained, restrained. I can't even think of the word anymore. You probably have much more self-control than me and don't get sucked in by those adverts. But I do. So of those 2 options, yeah, sorry, do type in the comments now whether you'd prefer 1 or option 2. Number 2 would get me every time. Number 1 would actually get me on the right day, in the right frame of mind. Love thing. Oh, you're all so well trained. You know the answer is 2. Or Jesus. I should have given it lovely. Lots of 2s. Fantastic. So yeah, I'm sorry if I've made everyone want cake. I am going to post the recipe just as a public, nothing to do with this, but just to help you guys along. I will post the recipe in a minute. It's very easy and it makes its own sauce. It's really good. But yeah, if on the right day with the wind behind me, that first one I might be able to get behind. But the second one will pretty much always get me. I can have had a massive meal and see one of those M&S chocolate cake puddingy adverts and think, yes, I do want that right now. And I think they were really onto something, hooking up with Deliveroo early on in lockdown. I'm sure they did very well out of that. But that illustration wasn't just so I can eat mug cake, though I am going to enjoy that later. Just wanted to remind us that it's important to create a thirst and a hunger in parents. So often we jump, and I'm so guilty of this, absolutely. We jump straight into, this is how to do faith at home, this is what you need to do, here's all the stuff, here's all the information. Where actually first they need to get excited about what is possible, what could be. And what's so great about things like when Ed shared that story from Amy earlier, I don't know about you, I thought that is brilliant, that's what I want to see for the families I work with. And when we tell those stories to the parents that we work with and the families that we work with, it inspires them. They might not have thought that was possible. When we show those pictures of makeup pads and sellotape on the wall, they think, hey, a kid can be so excited and enthusiastic about the gospel that they want to do this and they want to have a reminder of Christ in their lives and Christ in their home. How can we give them vision and show them what's possible? When, we all want our families to be reading Bible stories at home, don't we? And it's tempting to just say, hey, have you been reading the Bible with your kids? Here's another devotional, another plan or something. But can you show them? Can you do it with them? Can you... I've done some things reading Bible stories with parents and just showing them how to pause and wonder together, ask questions, pray, say, oh, this character felt sad. Why don't you tell God about a time you felt sad? And it's not complicated, but it really opens something up for them of, hey, this is something I could do and this is something to get excited about. Now, if I'm going to go around encouraging you to eat lots of cake, which is very irresponsible, we probably should talk about the dentist as promised, IKEA and the dentist. So I'm going to give you two options now. I want you to imagine we are going on a trip. And this is before lockdown, because since lockdown there's all sorts of other considerations and it's very complicated. But I would like you to tell me whether you would like us to go to IKEA or to the dentist. So let's do a thumbs up for IKEA. So you can either literally give me a thumbs up on your screen, or if you're a bit tech savvy, press reactions and do the thumbs up. So thumbs up for IKEA, and for the dentist I'd like you to wave. So wave your hands or stick a wave in the reactions, or type dentist or IKEA, whatever. I'll have some options. Yes, I am seeing an awful lot of thumbs up. Excellent use of the reactions, guys. I think the IKEAs have it. I'm going to say they do. And it won't surprise you to know that is the response I normally get. Why is that, guys? Someone type in the comments. What do we not like about going to the dentist? It's always dangerous waiting for the time lag while people type. Why do we not like going to the dentist? Pain, drills, noise, yep. All of those things, Joel, completely agree with you. No meatballs. Yes, Melissa, we will get to that in a moment. Feeling guilty. Darren, I think you have hit the nail on the head. I don't know about you, but I have this sort of sense of nervousness when I go to the dentist. And they're brilliant, excellent people, aren't they? Some of my best friends are dentists. And I love that they've trained so hard to help me. I know that they're good for me. They are, on paper, they are excellent people. And they are excellent people in real life. But frankly, I just feel a bit judged. When I go and ask for help and advice, I feel like they're going to tell me that I'm not good enough. They say things like, do you floss 3 times a day? And this is dangerous because this is being recorded, but guys, I don't. I really don't. When I was doing this, I thought I'd get some little props, and look, I found in my bathroom cabinet a little flossy thing. They were right at the back, people, I'm going to be honest, have not been using them. And so at the dentist, even though you know these people are great and they're good and they're for you, it can feel a little bit like, oh, I haven't been doing it quite right. And sometimes, as a parent, that's a little bit what it can feel like with the church. Even though you know your church leaders and your children's ministers and everyone, they're for you, they're good people, they've got knowledge and experience that you want. it can feel a bit scary to go and say, actually, we're really struggling with our little mini Bible times. It's not working, or we haven't read the Bible very much, or prayer isn't. We're not praying very often because we're not sure how to do it, or they can just feel a little bit inferior. So I want to offer an option which includes meatballs. Thank you very much, Melissa, for IKEA. So type in the comments now. Why do we like IKEA? And I do accept there is a small subset section of the population that doesn't like IKEA. My husband is very much in that category. It's all about the meatballs. People are loving the meatballs. Not the dentist, the food. Yeah, they give you an experience, don't they? They say, come in, have something delicious. Who knows what's in it, but it tastes amazing. And it's quite cheap. Have a free hot drink every time you go. I used to go with my children every week for precisely that reason. Oh, someone's calling me. That's not very good. What else do they say? They have massive toilets where you can have a potty training toddler, a baby in a buggy. You can take your double buggy in and you can go to the loo yourself. That is amazing. Whoever thought of that? They have a play area where you can drop your children off and do your shopping. And they give you options and ideas. They say, here's what it could look like. They create windows into normal life. They say, hey, this isn't just what you could have if you have £1 million in a mansion. If your house is only 150 square feet, here is how you can have absolutely everything. They display the whole range, whether you've got £5 or £5,000. They will have a bed or a sofa or a rug to suit you. They'll have different, yes, they love pressing the buttons and opening the doors. Amy, we can afford to all eat as a family. They make it accessible, they make it doable. And they let people try things out. It's an experience. You can go and lay on the bed and sit on the sofa and see what it all looks like. So my little challenge to you is, how can we as church leaders, as children's ministers and leaders, be a little bit more like IKEA? Just check in with yourself or whoever you use as a sounding board and say, am I being like IKEA, or am I being a bit more like the dentist? Am I showing people what this could look like, giving them options and ideas how to get there? Am I making it easy for them to do? Maybe providing, so go back to the mug cake example, am I providing ingredients and simple recipe cards? Could you hold a Q&A where they can ask questions about their cakes without being exposed? Could you link up an experienced mug cake maker with someone who's never made one before? Just check in with yourself. Am I ever in danger of making them feel guilty or overwhelmed? How can I make them feel excited and empowered about what this might look like for their family? So that's sort of what we do at Parenting for Faith. I'll put a little link. We have a whole section on equipping and supporting families that you can use with the Faith and Kids resources, and just link it all up. Use what's useful, ignore anything that isn't. And it's just great to be able to partner and go on this journey with parents, isn't it? And I think that's what we're going to be talking about in breakout groups now. Is that right, Ed?
Perfect, Anna. Perfect. And if there was one resource or one web page or something that you would just point us to in your world of Parenting for Faith, what is it you find that parents are most grateful for that you've been offering them?
Sure. So we've got a whole section called Equipping and Supporting Families. So I will give that to you, and I'll also pass on it's just a little workbook and ideas for thinking through this time in lockdown. That's probably been our most popular thing. It's all free. Right. I'll give you a link. Great.
Put that in the chat, Anna. Thank you so much.
I will do.
We are now going to go to our breakout groups. We have one question. Could you think of one way you have learned how to encourage parents in this particular season? So on a small level, one thing one conversation you had, one understanding you got from that, or on a bigger level, the whole church, this is how we can do it. Can we go to our break? You have just been sucked out of a group. What, was one of you in the middle of a sentence, or did you reach the point of just looking at each other wondering who was going to take control? Thank you very much. My group was excellent. I'm just going to start, and then others are going to start typing into chat. I would give anything just to say, why don't we shout out round the room? But seemingly it doesn't work, so we can't. But please do throw things into chat. Two of us in our group both shared church last week with one other family, so two families in a living room. The experience is that there are less family arguments and children seem to engage a bit more. and you're secretly more irritated by what your own children are doing. But we can now start to do that. Phone calls make a difference to parents. Personal contact. Jane mentioned it. People want personal contact. Gems, please put them into chat. Keep an eye on it. I won't read them all, but please put them in. It's me now for the second and final time. I'm just talking now about inspiring, training, and encouraging parents. I was very helpfully, and I've mentioned this before, so if you've been in one of these Zoom big day outs, you'll have heard me say this, but someone very clever told me at the beginning that in a crisis, there are commonly 3 ways to respond to an emergency, a crisis, in order. The first response is the emergency response. Now, we've been through this now. That is the first month or so. It's adrenaline fueled. It's calm heads taking control. It's working incredibly hard. It's late nights. It's early mornings. Some are in fear. Some are buying too much loo roll. Some have got more pasta than they ever thought humanly possible. That's the emergency response. Second response is recovery, because by the end of emergency response, you're exhausted. Recovery is, we're tired. We can't keep up this pace. We need a way of doing this that's sustainable. We need a routine. We need to find out what the new normal is. We need more sleep. We need some exercise. We need some conversation. We can't just be on Zoom and emails. The novelty of online church has worn off. How will we sustain faith? How will we love each other and show grace? And we discovered that normal isn't coming back anytime soon. The third stage is rebuilding. Maybe after the summer, that could be where we're at. We now have some sort of new normal. We now have some freedoms. We look back and discover we've learnt new skills. We have adapted. Some parents are encouraged that they have done it. They see that they have family memories. They see that they have stories to tell of God's faithfulness. They're their stories. They hear other people telling stories. We're also discovering that we're mourning the difficulty of lockdown. It's hurt. Some of us now have scars from lockdown. Some of us now know that we're going to remember it for the awful things that have happened. And we realize we now have to learn how to do this together. So if we're thinking about this recovery stage, I just want to sort of speak into that. 3 ideas to inspire, to train, and to encourage parents as we try to work out what it will look like. So firstly, to inspire parents, we become the storytellers. People use this phrase, don't they, in church, good gossip, which makes me jar a little, but we know what it is. It just simply means let's tell stories. Let's tell the good stories. Let's steal each other's stories. We were fortunate in our group to have a real life vicar. And he was saying that quite early on in lockdown, he tried to share that being a Christian family in lockdown is not theology books. It's a sofa and it's one Bible. His point being, you suspect that because I'm the vicar, I sit around my kitchen table and my children sit in blazer, flannels and a tie, and we open the Bible and we have 20-minute conversations and the children say, Daddy, please don't stop it. We want to carry on. We need to tell the stories where the bar is set low and we're saying this is what we celebrate. I remember being in a home, staying the night with someone, and she received a WhatsApp message on the sort of church WhatsApp that was, my husband has just led his first Bible time, his first family Bible time. That is a story to celebrate if the husband will let you. We tell the story. One family said, we've discovered in lockdown, every member of our family can pray in front of each other. Now the fact that they've told you that is that, they're making themselves vulnerable, because there is an answer which is, and you mean you haven't already? That's new to you? So we have to share the stories that demonstrate we are celebrating, and they're not set right up here. The bar is set low because we're all finding faith difficult anyway. And in lockdown, we certainly do. So can we inspire one another by telling stories? And if you're in this room now, that tells me that you are the people to tell stories. Because if you've made the effort to come into this room, that means you love parents, you love families, and you may even love Jesus a bit more than some others in your church. So that means you are the ones to tell stories. You are the ones people tell stories to. So you are the ones to say, would you mind if I told everyone in our church that story? I'll change your name if you want, but that story is so encouraging, I want everyone to hear it. Firstly, we inspire by becoming the storyteller. Secondly, we train by becoming the role model. We understand, again, probably more than some others, what the normality of what we're doing is going to look like. What does faith look like at the moment? What does faith look like in the summer? What does faith look like on holiday? And we know how not to intimidate others. So can we be the role model in the next month by just sharing, on holiday we did this, and you're allowed to share a family Bible time, a family prayer time when one child isn't in the room, and you point that out on social media. At that point, my 5-year-old was screaming outside, banging on the door, please don't make me pray again, Dad. Will we share the story of standing on top of a mountain and shouting prayers, and the son standing with his arm folded thinking, I cannot believe Dad's making us do this? Will we just role model what normal faith is going to look like? If those stories all make you cringe, don't share those stories. But my point is, on social media, we don't have to share a picture of us all in white suits standing by the finest restaurant we've ever been in. We could role model what it is, and we could train parents that this is normal faith. So secondly, we train by becoming the role models. And it might be, also, we are training parents how to do online Zoom. Maybe we'll do online Zoom on holiday, because for the first time we can go to church on holiday and not be left out. So will we help people to know, how do you handle the argument that always happens 2 minutes before church? What do you do? I've shared before that we did Revelation in our church last year. So in my mind is spiritual battles. My oldest daughter is 12. I've taken to shouting, you do know this is the devil, don't you? As we shout at each other before church. The devil wants you and I to be really cross with each other for the whole of church. The first time I said it, I think she found it slightly confusing and a bit worrying. I was shouting, you know this is the devil, don't you? But now she sort of says, I think I do know what you mean, Dad. Well, we train our families how to do online church, to expect the argument, to expect the chaos, to expect the grump halfway through the sermon, to be able to pause it, to pray halfway through a sermon because we simply are so angry with each other, nothing's happening. So thirdly and finally, will we encourage by becoming the networkers? It is holiday, and the majority of you have said in the straw poll you don't have time for anything more, and your teams don't have time for anything more. Probably the people in this room are the people who have a better handle on than most, who in our church does have capacity, who in our church has no capacity, and we also all need a holiday, because if we have been in this room, we've probably been working very hard. Is there someone in our church who is lonely and at home, and if you ask them to phone one family per week for the next 6 weeks, they'd actually be delighted with that? And you'd have to actually tell them what to say on the phone call, because that's a slightly freaky idea. Here's the names of the children. Why don't you pray for them and tell them you've been praying? Say there's nothing in particular you want to talk about, but you just want to see how they are and hear their voices. Is there someone in church who's not in the children's team, but they bake? Could you give them 3 families to drop off a bundle of brownies to? You don't have to tell them why, you just say, you know they'll love it. Is there someone in your church who will just pray? And I say just because we do believe that's the most powerful thing anyone could ever do for any other family. And will you give them 6 families to pray for over the summer? Will we network to encourage? will we remember that it doesn't need to be us? And in fact, if we get others on board, we are training them in ministry, because we know who the bakers are. So we're actually saying that is a spiritual gift. We know who the people who are lonely, who have a telephone, and to have a telephone and to be on your own is a spiritual gift, because you might be more able to encourage others than some others. So will we just be clear, this summer we cannot do it and we need a break, so we'll take a holiday, and we'll do that, as Jane has said, without guilt, and we'll take email off our phone. But will we just give an hour to thinking who in our church has a gift, who may not be exhausted this summer, who may actually be delighted to hear they can encourage others? So 3 ideas: we inspire by becoming the storyteller, we train by becoming the role model, and we encourage by becoming a networker. And we take a great holiday, and we come back, and we pray the Lord continues to use us as best as he can. If you have any questions, you can send them in. We've got one question before Amy gives us our last slot. Tips for role modelling when I don't have my own kids. Thank you for asking that. I think the first thing is if you're in this room, I don't think it particularly matters whether you happen to have children or not, or whether, as Jane said, your children are over 17, or whether your children are under 3, or you don't have children. Because if you're in this room, I'm going to again make the assumption that you're loving families, and you probably understand families better than a whole heap of others. So you don't have to have children to be able to speak love, encouragement, and joy into families' lives, to know how to encourage others. They are not thinking it when you are encouraging them. When you deliver brownies and say, I've been praying for your family, they are not thinking you don't have children. How could you possibly have done that? No one else is thinking that. So for role modeling in particular, I think you're just thinking, for instance, in online church, why don't you be the one to ask 3 families how they're finding online church? And why don't you talk to the person who leads online church in your church to find out the tweaks we can make so it caters for families better? In other words, that is role modeling how to do online church, by playing a part in it suiting families' needs. I'm going to stop talking because I feel like I'm getting less clear as I talk. So I'll leave that there. Anna has posted some tips on doing this. Last comment before Amy. I'm so grateful for our aunties and uncles in faith, without their own children, who pray for my kids and encourage me. That's the answer I should have given. That's far clearer than what I just said. That's how you do it. Well done. Amy is going to speak to us about how she is going to spend her summer. And that's not quite, I asked her to do this. It's not Amy who said, more than anything else, I want to tell you all how I'm going to spend my summer. So Amy's going to do that. Amy, will you tell us a bit about yourself so we understand why this is helpful to us? And then off you go. Go, Amy.
Okay, my name is Amy. I work for my church and for Faith in Kids, doing children's work stuff. I'm also a mum to 4 kids, and I have a husband who works full time. So lockdown has been somewhat of a challenge. Working out how to do children's ministry in lockdown has been somewhat of a challenge too. It's been tough and exhausting. And I guess coming through lockdown, there's been those questions that have hounded me, is those thoughts of everybody is obviously doing a better job than I am of doing everything, whether it's cutting their family's hair, teaching their children schoolwork, doing ministry, doing everything. And as I scroll through, because I'm nosy and I do this, as I scroll through these screens of all these wonderful faces of different kids workers across the country, I know that the answer to that is probably, well, definitely yes. You're no doubt all doing a better job than me of being you. And I think those are the 3 things. Is everyone doing a better job than me? Should I be doing more? And I don't know what to do next. Those are the questions that I feel are hounding me. And I think the answer to all of those things is, and that's okay. Everyone is doing a better job than me. at being them. You're not being asked to be them, you're being asked to be you. I should be doing more, maybe, but what should I be doing more of? And maybe I'm not clear, and I don't know what to do next. And I think lockdown has taught us that we can't know what to do next. So we've been so good at planning, we've been great people in kids' work of having timetables and plans mapped out, and we've had to rip them up and throw them in the bin. And I think even as I think about September, should I have a plan? Should I have this? Should I write a new plan every week and throw it in the bin every week and write a new one next week when things change? It's all a little bit overwhelming. So how will I be spending my summer? Will I be spending my summer writing plans every week so I can rip them up and throw them in the bin again? Will I be spending my summer doing all sorts of new kinds of training so that I can be ready to be this all-action superhero that can cut hair and do an online course in, I don't know, graphic design or something? No, I won't. I will be having a holiday. And I would really encourage all of you, please take a break. I don't think any of you will really understand quite how tired and quite how exhausted you are until you stop. And I think I would really encourage you to take a break sooner rather than later. Your families in your churches and your kids are going to need you in September to not have totally exhaust yourself and running on empty. So if you can take a break sooner rather than later, so that come the end of August, you can start to say, what are the guidelines now? What is our church's plan now? What could we have in mind now? And if you could start to cook in your head, maybe is there one thing that I could start to think through? Could we do an outside family service somewhere, a walk thing, a book something in, a hide pebbles around a park? Just start to cook one idea, and then come mid-August, start to work out, can we make that happen? So I would say, so that's my big advice. Take a break. And during that break, I'd love you to do 3 things. I'd love you to consider, looking at Psalm 8, verse 3, consider the greatness of God. Go and see a beautiful view somewhere, look up, enjoy the trees, enjoy the sky, enjoy the stars. Consider the greatness of God. And then Hebrews 12, verse 3, consider him who bore such opposition and kept going. Consider Jesus. Fall in love with him again this summer. Spend some time loving Jesus and knowing him better, because he is all you have to give. So you need to love him more. So consider the greatness of God, consider how great Jesus is, and love him again. And then back to what Ed said in the Philippians verses, consider that team, consider partnership, consider the families that you're working with, consider loving them, consider your team, encouraging them, consider the children. And once you've considered God, consider Jesus, and consider the children in your church, then start to think about making a plan. Start to think about letting that shape your plan. I think one of the great things about lockdown is that we've had to throw all of the structure of how we do ministry, the groups that we do, we've pretty much had to throw all that in the bin and start again. So maybe as you start to plan and you start to think through what could I do, start again. Not everybody has to move up to a senior school group right now. Not everything has to work the way it's always worked before. We've had a great opportunity to work with families. We've had a great opportunity to work in partnership by saying the children are your responsibility. You have led this. We've tried to resource you. We've tried to encourage you. We've tried to help you. Perhaps this is a brilliant opportunity for you to say, okay, families, how do we now structure what we do in response to what helps you? So yes, take a break, have a holiday, have fun, see people, enjoy God, consider him, fall in love with Jesus, and then start to think about what should I do next. Okay, that's all I need to say. Ed, do you want to ask me anything?
Yes, I do. There's a question come in that I think it would be great if you answer. Is how do we avoid the pressure of parental expectation to be ready to provide in the new term? So you've just said we're listening to them and we're considering families. There might just be the thing, and I don't know, nor do you, but in September there might be the sense of church now is ready to get to take the burden that I feel like I've been carrying. And you've just helpfully been saying, listen, off you go, Amy, you talk.
I think I'd want to pick the question. So for the parent who's saying, basically, what are you going to do in September and what is the plan going to be and where are the children going to meet, and is the parent who is struggling and is wanting someone to fix it for them. So is panicking, understandably, please, I need a normal. So I would try and start to pick behind the question and say, we're all struggling. We don't know what the normal is. It's hard, isn't it? What is it that you're hoping for? We'd all love to send our children to an expert again, whether it be at school or at church, because we're all exhausted and we just want to push our kids somewhere else. Please, can someone else just help me out? So what might come across as I want you to have a plan and I want you to tell me what it is that might make you feel a bit, is probably just somebody who's saying, I need a bit more help. And I think to try and say, yes, it's to say, yes, it's hard to plan. It's hard to know what to do. Things are changing all of the time. And I get that it's a struggle for everybody. What do you think would help your family? And I think just try to start to pick behind the question of is this just a panic reaction that you've had enough of doing everything for your kids at home? Because I think that's okay. And maybe you've set the bar too high for yourself as to what your expectations are. And can we just, let's talk about what living for Jesus looks like. And let's talk about how to make it enjoyable and not a pressure of something that you have to deliver. So how can you actually enjoy showing your kids Jesus rather than feel like it's another thing that you have to do? What do you enjoy doing? So I think I would say, what do you enjoy doing as a family? What makes your family smile? Let's bring the gospel in.
Thank you, Amy.
Was that a more confusing answer than the question was?
No, that's the weirdness of Zoom. I want to reassure you, after you've been speaking to a screen for 3 minutes, you're not sure if words are still English that are coming out your mouth. Amy, they were all English.
Okay, good.
Okay. So we are now going to go into a breakout group for the final time. We're almost there. So I guess there are two things you could do with this breakout group. One is you could just share one thought that has struck you. It doesn't need to be a thing you will do. Do you want to share one thought, one idea that has struck you and you just share it, you put it out there? Or do you have, I guess, one question you're asking, one question that something you've heard today has raised, or the question you brought to this that no one has helped you with, and so you're going to leave with that question? That's quite annoying. So one thought to share or one question to share, and to see your wonderful faces. Now, if we only have 1 minute or so, but maybe if something particular came up from that chat, I think I was struck that the messages in our breakout group were consistent, that maybe what we have drawn from our time together is first of all the value of personal contact, is the value of seeing someone, the value of a physical card in their hand, and secondly, trying to inspire parents rather than perhaps another resource in an email, even if that is a Faith in Kids excellent resource. But how is it we can inspire and paint a picture and encourage rather than an alternative? And finally, Julianne was cut off in our group as she finished by saying, perhaps lockdown has given parents a little more of a window into what Christian parenting is, what it is that Jesus is in the home, not just in the church. I think we're broadly there. Yes, someone is asking for an FIC webinar. I think, can I post? Oh no, I've posted it privately. Let me just do that to everyone. There we go. Great. There is a link to an FIC webinar that's happening tomorrow. I haven't been involved in the organising it, so I'm not totally sure what it's on, but it is involved in children's and youth work, and these FIC seminars have so far been about how do you lead churches in lockdown. So I'm assuming that those gazillion questions you really hoped we would be answering, like how many children can sit on grass in a park together holding a hymn book but never singing, we haven't answered any of those questions. We haven't told you how many bits of perspex it takes before you can sing the national anthem. I don't know the answer to any of those questions, and I'm sorry I don't. But that webinar is probably, they probably know all the answers that we don't. They're great like that. In the absence of knowing what else to do, I'm going to read Hebrews 12:3 that Amy took us to. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Let me pray. Father, would this summer, above all else, be a time when we consider Christ? We, of course, pray that for the families we have met here for. Would the families, Father, we love and share this affection of Christ with, would they consider Christ this summer? Father, would we entrust them to Christ? He is their Messiah and we are not. Father, would we know how to rest? Would we know how to encourage others into ministry, perhaps in our absence? Father, we pray this so that we would not lose heart. We would not grow weary. Be gracious to us, Father, and thank you for this time together. Thank you for those we've spoken to, the encouragement they have been, the skills, the gifts of others. But thank you most of all for Christ, who endured this for us. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you for thanking us, rather than be caught in an endless vortex of thanks. Why don't we go our separate ways? A few of us will hang around for 5 or 10 minutes afterwards if you want to. You don't need to say thank you. You keep doing it. Thank you to you. Thank you to everyone. It's been lovely to see you. We now have to leave Zoom, as we always do, by waving and slowly backing outwards, because that's how we're going to finish all meetings now. So you have to wave as you press leave the meeting, and that's normal now. That's what we all do. So thank you very much.